saw that. 7:00.
Welcome to the Liberty Without Compromise live stream broadcast. We are, in fact, the only conservative political live stream in all of Kootenai County. We're your hosts, Dan and Dawna Wilson. And we're here to discuss our elected and appointed political officials, leaders, and influencers. Join in on the conversation tonight with your questions and comments. Then you can type those right into the comment section on whichever platform you're watching, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, or on X. And I'm going to screen those questions and comments. And if you're lucky, we'll even make them a part of the program tonight. If you're joining us live, be sure to share this live stream to your page or profile. And then also, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel at The Idaho Sheriff. And there you can rewatch the program. And then also for our Liberty Without Compromise podcast, listen and subscribe wherever you get your shows. And now, finally, here's your host, Dan Wilson.
Brr. It's 4 degrees outside right now.
Are we talking about the weather?
It is. It's cold.
Are we talking about the weather?
I'm running a little sluggish tonight.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that you're my co-pilot because you'll keep me right online. Hello, folks. Thanks for joining us. It is Wednesday, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time in the great state of Idaho, Kootenai County to be specific. And yes, we are talking about all things Liberty Without Compromise, a continuation of my failed sheriff race in 2024.
Don't you love that when that gets added to your bio?
It does all the time. But I embrace it.
When Grok adds that to your bio. Oh, Dan Wilson, the failed Kootenai County Sheriff candidate.
I'd rather have failed doing something noble than to have not done anything at all.
Say.
Yeah. So I have unfinished business, you and I, but me specifically, with Sheriff Robert Bob Norris and Bruce Matari, and I am running again for sheriff in 2028. But that's not what this broadcast is about. This broadcast is a combination of still bringing the truths about the political leaders right here in Kootenai County, as well as talking about our great heritage, those founding fathers, the principles that they left us in this thing called life, liberty, and property. So it's not going to be a dull moment. We talk about all sorts of things, national, local, and I don't know, some things in between. So we got quite a show tonight, though.
A bunch of you just joined us. So if you are just getting on this live stream, just drop us a line and say hello, and I can share that up on the screen and make this a little bit more interactive. And then as the conversation's unfolding, join in on that also. It's fun to see you guys chattering in that comment section. It feels much more together.
I know. And I like this.
Friends in a room.
I like this new setup. You've been working very hard for the past 2 weeks to get a little more.
Because we're standing.
Yeah.
But it looks like you're standing. Mm-hmm. But then I'm like, so
you're micro.
Yeah, I'm the micro host.
It's a little more comfortable in here, and as we continue to work on the setup, I know that you've been working hard to try to get a platform that will allow us to stream on all the different social media platforms.
Yeah, we're using a multi-streaming platform now where we're just kind of weighing our options because we do want to expand and include all of our social platforms that have all been viable. We've had interaction on all of those, so we want to multi-stream to them all at once, and we're just trying to look at what's most cost effective and then works.
We're on satellite.
Yes,
so the problem is we don't have hard line.
Yeah.
Well, here's one thing that I do know that we have and that has great audio, and that is our podcast, the Liberty Without Compromise podcast. Episodes 1 through 9 are available now wherever you stream your podcast, and the series is called Power Player Pastors in Kootenai County. It's discussing those pastors who hold some pretty specific political clout right here in Kootenai County, what they had to say during my campaign behind the scenes, what and where their alliances were, as well as, some lies. Mm-hmm. So you won't want to miss that. It's on the Liberty Without Compromise. I guess, our streaming page. What do you call that? Podcast.
Oh, yeah, podcast. That's the name of the show. You can search under Liberty Without Compromise, and you should be able to find that pretty easily on any platform where you download and listen to your podcasts.
Yeah. So the past several months, I have been exposing every time that Bob Norris, the sheriff of Cooney County, that great lawman from Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, who worked his last stint under the Homeland Security Division, the Fusion Center, where he managed assets, his words, not mine, like the FBI, the CIA, and the U.S. Attorney's Office, trained with Mastad and Shin Bet. Quite the leader among men. And we find that he continually lies quite a bit. Mm-hmm. And how do we know that he lies? Well, first of all, he loves to lie on camera. And it's very easy, especially when it comes to sheriff business, to request records to back up his statements. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a teaser tonight in a video that is a common phraseology comment, if you will, of the sheriff when he likes to demean our neighbors to the west in Spokane. And he likes to claim that the Spokane area resident criminals are the ones that are causing a great divide, a great problem right here in Cooney County. And if he could only throw up a border, well, we're going to let you listen to this. I'm going to give a little bit of a comment and some stats. And this is a teaser to a much larger collage of him saying just that.
As you know, we have a public defender situation that's occurring in the state of Idaho that is compromising public defense for many defendants. There are other counties that are dismissing property crimes as we speak. We live in close proximity to a cesspool called Spokane in the state of Washington. Many of our crime series come from that cesspool of Washington and the city of Spokane. The business.
Cesspool of Spokane. Many of our crime, what do you say? I don't know, syndicates or something like that. Come from, I can't even remember now.
Said crime stats.
Come from Spokane, where up until 2 years ago,
cesspool of Spokane,
he was borrowing their helicopter, and he's cross-deputized all those guys over there too, but he doesn't like Spokane. So after months and months and months of hearing him say this over and over again, I decided to request from the prosecuting attorney's office statistics specifically on, in 2024, so just 1 year ago, how many felonies did they prosecute and how many misdemeanors did they prosecute? And out of that total number, how many of those were, from residents of Spokane and or Eastern Washington? Now, the prosecuting attorney in their response went into a little bit of detail where they wanted to, explain a little bit about statistics and probation violations versus new charges, etc. But to ease everything today, we're going to talk about the following. In 2024, total felonies, Cooney County prosecuting attorney prosecuted was 1,600 and misdemeanors 1,337. What was interesting is they do not keep records of how many prosecutions are from Washington State.
But
I'm going to say that again.
He miraculously knows that that's where majority of crime is coming from, the cesspool, but they don't keep track.
And so I would go one step further to say that when law enforcement arrests and charges a suspect, that's only the first prong, the first leg. We take them, book them into jail, and then it's up to, after their first hearing, whether the judge finds probable cause or not to allow the charges to continue. Well, then you have the prosecutor who has to also figure out whether or not the arrest was legitimate and whether or not it's worthy of prosecuting. So maybe Bob Norris is making a lot of arrests for Spokane residents because he's targeting them. But by the time they get to the prosecuting attorney's office and the courts, they're saying, yeah, these aren't legitimate charges, and they're cutting them loose. Because, he's campaigning on this, that it's a large number.
Yeah, I guess my question to you is, what is the benefit? What is the benefit from the standpoint of what that looks like? The majority of the crimes coming from Spokane versus Kootenai County. Is this in the public eye? Why is it beneficial for him to portray Spokane as the problem?
Well, we don't want to think of our own residents right here in northern Idaho as being problematic. In fact, I think the last 3 or 4 arrests this week were from folks from right here and have lived in this region for quite a long time.
Okay.
Now, I was a police officer in the adjacent state right along the border to Kootenai County. And in Washington state, the laws were so lax that a crime that was a felony in Idaho could be a misdemeanor in Washington state. And then Washington hardly ever prosecuted, did anything on misdemeanors. And so all the dirtbags, my experience for the 8 years that I worked at that agency, is that all of the dirtbags come from Idaho into Washington.
Oh, really?
To commit their crimes, knowing that,
Okay, so that probably is why you took pause after hearing him say this in public
I thought it
forums
was
several times.
full of BS.
Yeah.
So, but what it does is it makes it sound uber sexy. I'm protecting everybody from, and we know Washington,
the boogeyman,
is a liberal state, King
right.
County, and you know, the west side there in the Seattle area. But over on the eastern Washington side, county, not so much Spokane City. There's still a lot of very conservative people there, and they are feeling the effects of their liberal progressive laws in Washington state. But I think it's disingenuous if you can't prove the stats to come out and say it over and over and over again, like when he lied saying that he stood between federal agents and a homeowner.
Yeah, I was going to say, what are some of the other lies?
When he says that you know, the license plate readers don't capture certain amounts of information, that it's secure and that's never been hacked. These are just a small reflection, but we're going to put that collage together. This is just a teaser, and we're going to continually show you, the folks right here in Kootenai County, in the region, what your sheriff fibs about and why that should matter to you as a chief law enforcement officer of the county. So,
yeah, that's what I want to hear from you, is which you said is coming at a later time, but I think a lot of people probably write it off. Well, he's speaking in public. It's off the top of his head. It's not really something he should necessarily have accountability toward, but it's a pattern.
He says it over and over and over again. And I've got, 5 or 6 videos that I viewed today where he's saying some derivative of it, some variation of the same thing. And Scott Hogue, the former chief of Post Falls, I think he was the chief. Yeah. Running for mayor now of Post Falls, got up to speak at the crime fighting technology town hall that Norris had. And even he alluded to Spokane being bad. So I think it's easy to blame all of our woes on that. But when the sheriff continually campaigns, and when I say campaign, I mean, he's not running right now as if he's not always campaigning, but meaning that he's going around to convince people of truths that he wants them to believe.
It's kind of the
right
campaign of human nature when you're convincing somebody toward your side. Terry chimed in and said it's possibly just deflection. That's a thought that she had. Yeah,
very well could be. Now, speaking of lies and, trying to paint a picture other than what the reality of it is, I don't know about you. Well, I think I know. For the past several weeks, you and I have been somewhat mesmerized and in awe of DOGE, Department of what? Government Efficiency. DOGE, headed by Elon Musk. Liberals are melting down on both sides of the aisle. Yes, liberal Republicans, the same as Democrats, failing to understand that this agency was created lawfully by Trump, and Musk does not have to go before a confirmation by the Senate.
For those of us, for adults, when Christmas and your birthday is like lost its luster in terms of getting excited and, I can't wait to see what happens tomorrow or what I get. And that's really what we've compared it to. And I've seen other adults making that comment. It's like Christmas every day. Seeing what they're going to uncover.
I think that what has been especially revealing, I did not really know much about USAID before DOGE came out before Musk and the juveniles that are the geniuses that are finding all the data. But really, what is USAID? It was an executive order put forward by JFK in 1961, the United States Agency for International Development. It's an independent agency of the United States government that is primarily responsible for administering civilian foreign aid and development assistance under the Secretary of State. So I didn't really know much about it before, but it's basically a large slush fund, about $23 billion a year, that is then kind of disseminated out through all sorts of different grants, if you will. And when it was originally thought of and put into place, it was to help promote liberty, I guess, to other nations and to help with the peacekeeping and things like that, providing food to impoverished nations or helping out tsunamis or things like that. But true to its form, bureaucrats, unelected bureaucrats, take hold of these funds. And Congress, because they are idiots and they're complicit in, and many of them, it looks like, are receiving kickbacks from some of this stuff, they authorize the funds to go in, and then there's all sorts of kickbacks and special things. Like, for example, money going to these NGOs that help facilitate the invasion of our country, right?
Well, and I know when we were at the border last January, a year ago, we were made very aware of the non-government, the NGOs.
Right, non-governmental organizations.
And then the next thought is, where are they getting the funding?
Mm-hmm.
And you figure, you're like, by now, okay, I get the game. It's coming from the government somewhere.
Yeah.
But I mean, to realize now that so much of that is being revealed, seeing real numbers and seeing that actual distribution.
As you're pulling up the website there for that link so we can go over some of the fraud, I'm also going to point out a few other things, and that is the U.S. Treasury. There has been so much fraud and waste by, again, unelected bureaucrats, the fourth branch of government. We're going to talk a little bit about that and how did we get to this point in our country to where we have, the legislative, the judicial, and the executive, but now we have the fourth branch, which is the deep state, the administrative state. So if we're at the website, it is the whitehouse.gov fact sheet page at USAID, waste and abuse runs deep. So we're going to go over a couple of these shockers. 1.5 million to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion in Serbia's workplaces and business communities. Okay, show of hands, how many of you right now can find Serbia on a map? 70,000 for production of a DEI musical in Ireland. 2.5 million for electric vehicles for Vietnam. 47,000 for transgender opera in Colombia. $32K for a transgender comic book in Peru. I wonder how much they would give me if I wrote a comic book. I might learn how to draw. $2 million for sex changes and LGBT activism in Guatemala. $6 million to fund tourism in Egypt. Hundreds of thousands of dollars for a nonprofit linked to designated terrorist organizations, even after an inspector general launched an investigation. So again, they don't care. Millions to Echo Health Alliance, which was involved in research at the Wuhan lab. Hundreds of thousands of meals that went to Al-Qaeda affiliated fighters in Syria. Funding to print personalized contraceptive birth control devices in developing countries, and hundreds of millions of dollars to fund irrigation canals, farming equipment, and even fertilizer used to support the unprecedented poppy cultivation and heroin production in Afghanistan's benefiting the Taliban. I mean, we're just at the tip of the iceberg, as it has been said. And what you see right there is money laundering. Last week, I mentioned there was $50 million allotted for Gaza, which isn't the Gaza next to Israel, but it's Gaza in Africa. Don't know where the location is. You and I both know that $50 million worth of condoms is a lot, unless they're charging, $2,000 a condom or something. It's money laundering.
Yeah.
Your money
It's like
that
the
you work
healthcare.
hard for, that you can barely right now buy eggs and other staples, a good slab of meat. Well, they're taking and taxing us more and more and more. And it's not just necessarily the income tax. We're going to talk about that here shortly, but it's in all sorts of other impacts that you may or may not realize. I mean, I was looking at the other day, a deodorant stick. I remember not even 10 years ago paying less than $3 for a stick of deodorant. The other day, I saw in the store that they are now just shy of $10.
Well, it's not only that, the quantity is, they will increase the size of the packaging, and then the product that's in it is getting smaller and smaller as that price goes up. So
Yeah.
you're probably looking at something that's tripled in cost comparatively.
But these are all part of the waste because it all
Yeah.
has a cause and effect, a trickle down effect. So we want to know, though, where all of this started. When did this start? Do you know when it started?
Of course not.
Well,
What was that?
you got
Was
to
that
build into
that's a
the
real
excitement.
Please tell me.
Most
Drum
people
roll.
don't know.
Yeah.
Really, where it started was in the early 1900s, post-Civil War, the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, lots changing. Teddy Roosevelt, of course, was leading the country. And, you know, Teddy Roosevelt, for all the good things that he was as a man, he also had some extremely progressive views that were not in alignment with the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And specifically, a social justice warrior of his time. He's the one that helped expand the U.S. Forest Service. He started it along with Gifford Pitchard and John Muir of the Sierra Club. But he did some remarkable things and some things that were necessary for the time, though probably not really constitutionally sound. But right after him, we got a president, a Democrat, named Woodrow Wilson. We're going to talk about him in just a second, but before that, we're going to go to slide number 1. I want you guys to see this yourself because just to hear it doesn't make as much sense. John Dewey was a philosopher. Many of you have heard about the Dewey Decimal System. John Dewey, who lived from 1859 to 1952, did a lot to this country when it came to education, when it comes to education and how it drastically changed at the university level, what students were being taught and what they carried with them from the truths to more of a Darwinian theory. So John Dewey, this great philosopher, he subscribed not to the traditional classical education, writing, arithmetic, language, science, all of those things. He adopted what was called the German model. And the German model was heavily based on Darwinism, evolution, the fittest survive. And when he adopted that whole philosophy and that worldview, he brought that to the classroom when he instructed at the University of Chicago, and then later on, I believe it was at Columbia. But what he did is he changed the idea of who man is and what man's responsibility and relationship to God is. And he brought with him instead this idea that we're constantly evolving and the Constitution really isn't relevant anymore. Here's something that he said that gives you a glimpse of who he is. He says, no government by experts in which the masses do not have the chance to inform the experts to their needs can be anything but an oligarchy managed in the interest of the few. And the Enlightenment must proceed in ways which force the administrative specialists to take account of the needs. The world has suffered more from leaders and authorities than from the masses. The essential need is the improvement of the methods and conditions of debate, discussion, and persuasion. That is the problem of the public. So basically what he's saying is in the Constitution was okay for a time, but now we need to progress with time because things have changed. And we're going to hear the same thing that Woodrow Wilson espouses when he argues the same. Remember, folks, the Declaration of Independence was that great document where we declared our independence and our grievances against the crown. And then later on, because of that declaration and the winning of the war, we wrote the Constitution. Now, those two documents are married, and many times you're going to see progressives try to divorce the Declaration from the Constitution. The Declaration is sexy. I mean, here's what's going on. This is why we have our grievances. All men are created equal, so on and so forth. But when it comes into the representative republic aspect, well, Dewey, as well as Woodrow Wilson, believed that the wheels of government in the constitutional republic took too long. And too many people were in positions that really don't understand science in modern times. And therefore, we really have to change this, right? And since we can't really change the Constitution, well, that gave birth to this idea of the administrative state, which is created primarily by the executive branch. The president creates, those that do work for him in the various cabinet position levels. A good example of that would be like the EPA. And then you have all these unelected bureaucrats in all these different departments, ATF, for example, that arbitrarily make up rules. Sometimes that Congress doesn't even know about, but they're given a wide swath to interpret the laws the way they want to and to apply it. As we've even seen here in North Idaho with the Sacketts and the EPA and their, decade-long fight over their right to build their house over near the lake. Dewey's constitutional view of liberty was relative to the forces that at a given time and place are increasingly felt to be oppressive. It's all about feelings. And here's my question for you folks. Is the Constitution living and breathing, or is the words of the Constitution transcend time and places? What would you think? It's time and places. It is not living. The truths that are found not only in the Declaration of Independence, but also in the Constitution, more specifically, the Bill of Rights, are universal for every person, as in the laws of nature and of nature's God. Of course, the founders, quoting John Locke, more often than any other source when they were convened together to write the Constitution, to frame it. John Locke said, look, in his two treatises of government, he believed that all men were created equal in value under God, and each man has the right to life, liberty, and property. And that's really part of the framework of how our Constitution was written. It is not a living and breathing and subject to interpretation, and it's a good thing, because at the whims of man, whatever is in today is not in tomorrow. John Dewey denied the laws of nature and nature's God. A couple other interesting things about John Dewey. So while he promoted his progressive social ideas for government while he was teaching at the University of Chicago and at Columbia University, he also was a founding member of the NAACP and the ACLU. So he was quite an activist. He also liked to run around naked, apparently. He was a nudist, he and his wife. And he went to Europe to study prostitution.
And this is the same Dewey Decimal guy.
Same Dewey Decimal.
Yeah. Just double checking.
So my point to it is that when you have a worldview to where you're constantly exploring and there is no more absolute and it's all subjective, if there is no God that sets the universe in place and the rules that we all have to live by, and if you're going to adopt the model that we evolved, which the founders did not believe, that there is no God, then yeah, by all means, you're going to interpret everything through that worldview. But then the question is what happens when the next guy comes in that doesn't agree with you? How is your view any more legitimate than his view or her view? And we're seeing this quite a bit in the transgender debate, right? Or somebody being offended because I'm not going to call you by your pronouns because I identify you the way I see you. You know, you have a right to tell me that you want to be called by whatever pronoun. And I also have the right to say, yeah, as my friend John, if you're listening, bollocks, the Brit. It's bollocks. I'm not going to call you what
Well,
your pronoun
and
is.
to get even more controversial in conservative circles, when Christians are pushing a Christian worldview, and as you've stated, we're really a post-Christian nation, and they're pushing Christian ideals like bringing the Bible back into public schools or have scriptures read before class or pulling certain books out of the library. But when you're talking about Constitution and what's lawful, if we're going down that road, then you're bringing in or you're opening a door for people who have beliefs very differently from you being able to act on what their agenda is.
Well, the founders said that the Constitution was for moral and righteous people.
Yeah.
And if people have one, while the founders were adamant, Jefferson, as we're going to talk about here shortly, about your right to choose who you worship and how you worship, the fact of the matter is that the government was at that time more aligned in a idea of everybody believed in more of a Christian God. That was predominantly the religion when America was formed. And if you think about it, people gathered together to form a government that have a commonality.
Right.
And it's not to say that everybody came from Europe, because not everybody did come from Europe. And this is for a complete different argument later on. And we're going to get to that more, though, about what you were just saying there as far as religious freedom. It does change when you are now a melting pot and you have thousands of different types of religion, and you have your culture is not aligned in the same biblical worldview that it maybe once was. So back to Woodrow Wilson, who was president from 1913 till 1921. Here's the president you should all be studying if you want to know how we got started down this path. Now, Woodrow Wilson was a globalist. He was a progressive. And in fact, he was the only political scientist that ever became president. So he also was a professor and a governor of New Jersey. But Woodrow Wilson accomplished some pretty, I guess you could say, impressive feats during his 2 terms of presidency. Let's talk about what Woodrow Wilson had to say. Now, also as a framework, the dude signed over 1,800 executive orders. So anytime you're thinking that Trump is writing a lot, think about the fact that in 1913 through 21, in those 8 years, over 1,300 executive orders were written by Woodrow Wilson. The things that Woodrow Wilson put into place back in those years of his presidency were later perfected by Mr. Big Government himself, Franklin Roosevelt. So here's what the president had to say. It is particularly true of constitutional government that its atmosphere is opinion. It does not remain fixed in any unchanging form, but grows with the growth and is altered with the changes of the nation's needs and purposes. He goes on to say, if you want to understand the real Declaration of Independence, do not repeat the preface. Okay, so he basically doesn't like part of the Declaration because it's convicting. We the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, those type of things. Or actually, I started to say the Constitution. The Declaration of Independence is preface is different than that. But some of the feats that the president was able to, I guess, sign off on when he was president, the Underwood-Simmons Tariff Act. So he got rid of all the tariffs drastically, and said, well, it was unfair to parts of the other world, and it was unfair to the American people that were trying to compete globally. At the same time, they passed the Federal Reserve Act of 1913, which, 16th Amendment allowed income tax. And the creature from Jekyll Island and the formation of the Federal Reserve, all those good things happened at the same time. 17th Amendment. This amendment provided for direct popular election of senators. Another very bad thing, should have remained with the local state governments to propose and to elect their own senators to the federal Congress. The Federal Trade Commission Act of 1914, Clayton Antitrust Act, the Keating-Owens Child Labor Act, Admonson Act, Working Men's Compensation Act. So if you get injured on a federal job, your medical's taken over. 18th Amendment, 19th Amendment, which is alcohol, and then the 20th Amendment. I probably got this wrong, but the 18th Amendment rather for prohibition. The 19th Amendment was specifically for women's right to vote. Really, what you saw here is you saw the beginning of the government coming in and deciding that they were going to start becoming God to man. That they're going to start taking care of the needs. They're going to limit the hours that you can work. They're going to limit whether or not kids can work rather than leave it up to the parents. They started inserting themselves. And the more these agencies came online and later that were expanded by FDR, that's where these fourth branch of government, all of these unelected bureaucrats started taking place. And Congress has been extremely stupid for 100 years of not managing what all these different departments are doing. They're too interested in getting reelected rather than to, hold the executive accountable, finding out what's going on. And I think it's interesting that Trump came into office this time. This is, of course, his second time running, and he maybe had a clue to it before, but I don't think he even was aware as to how much fraud and waste was happening, not only with USAID, but the U.S. Treasury. It's completely unacceptable that the IRS, who many of you can probably relate to this, you miss one payment and look how many fees and penalties that you're assessed in interest. But yet they can issue your social security number to multiple entities and no way to confirm or check it.
Yep.
The amount of fraud and waste that is happening with just social security and the IRS and what they're funding, and we're not even going to go down that path tonight, but rest assured that what's happening right now is a good thing, so long as this isn't a platform for them to implement AI technology. Man is not trustworthy enough. I mean, I don't even know if this is true, but they're saying that federal workers that retire, only 10,000 per month can retire because all their records have to be hand jammed and they're stored down 200 feet in a limestone mine. I don't know if that's true. I assume that it is from what I've read, but this is how archaic and backwards and inefficient that government is. But they have no problem steamrolling a citizen. I mean, they wanted to sick 80,000 new agents on the American people to tax us more, to give more to Ukraine so that they can then launder the money back to our congressmen and to other unelected officials and donors of both Republicans and Democrats. So I think that what Trump's doing right now is doing a good thing, as long as they don't decide that AI needs to start managing it because man is too incompetent. That is where, we're going to see this clash of AI and man, where I'm hoping that we don't get to the point where AI takes over for us in all aspects.
We're rooting for Doge.
The surveillance
we're rooting for the finding what's going on. We want that. But I mean, think about if the solution that then is presented, like you were saying, man is too fallible really to manage all of this. And then that's where they usher in AI or that technology to take it out of the hands of man.
And the conclusion of this is that we're all of us are responsible for holding our government accountable. Now, I can't do anything really well from a federal standpoint. Nobody knows who I am, couldn't care less. But I can do something right here. And let me assure you that if things like this are happening at a federal level, they're also happening at a state level.
We get fixated on federal.
And they're happening at a county level.
Yeah.
And don't be a Trump worshiper. If he's doing good things, applaud it, but always watch. This is the same guy that pushed Operation Warp Speed and continually pushes the jab, which my belief is a highly deadly inoculation. It's not a vaccination that is killing a lot of people, as we're finding out from the disclosures that are finally emerging. But hold your government accountable. Do not worship Trump. don't worship anybody but God himself. So that's about all I can beat that one up for right now before we lose viewership. But I'm going to let you roll out your very interesting story.
Yeah, we got a special segment as promised. There's a local guy. His name is Mike. I've said it wrong for so long. Mike Petum.
We were calling him Petum because that's the way it's spelled.
Yeah, I kind of like Petum.
Peetoom.
Petum. So we've got a never before seen segment that we are now airing for the first time live. So we want you to join in as we are watching this together. Join in with your comments and questions as we expose something that this Mike Petum of North Idaho News, what he did, you're going to find out. I'm going to play it. I'm not going to retell the story because I did some investigation and put this together. So we're going to watch it together. This will be made available separately right after the program tonight on social media so that this can be shared. Do you have questions about it?
I just want to make certain.
Yeah.
So Mike Petum. So North Idaho News, you're talking about that page on Facebook and Instagram that reports on happenings, newsworthy, instant, breaking news type things right here in
it's all going to be explained in this segment. Right. So again, watch it together. Put in your comments. I'm going to put those up on the screen because we're going to have fun seeing this one through.
This is Mike Petum. He called the Coeur d'Alene police and said that Mike Marcourt, who owns the Patriot Hangout in Coeur d'Alene, tried to swerve and run him over in the parking lot at Nosworthy's. Now, a bit of backstory. Mike Petum knew that Mike Marcourt was supporting Dan Wilson for Kootenai County Sheriff. Mike Petum supports Bob Norris. Not only does Mike Petum support Bob Norris for sheriff, but he's often seen with Norris, volunteers at his events, and generally hangs around places where Norris is and other people who support Norris.
And I was told by this Mike Petum on social media that I would be losing my business, Patriot Hangout, because I supported Dan. Ran into him a couple of times on the street. He was yelling and screaming things from the street when they were sign waving, for Bob Norris. Calling, oh, there's the guy supporting Dingleberry Dan. Yeah, all they can do is name call these people, these so-called conservatives that now are here in our county, that have been here about the last 4 years. Isn't that interesting timing? And this Mike Petum guy is just sitting there recording and calling, running his mouth. Yeah, notice that we don't call names, you do. You call names. Yeah, all of you call names. I said you're a joke, and you are a joke. Yeah, that is what I said. You're a liar. You are a liar. Yeah. Go back to California where you belong. Yeah. You're corrupt. The lot of you, you're corrupt. Corrupt.
One morning, Mike Marcourt was having breakfast at Nosworthy's in Coeur d'Alene and sees Petum in the restaurant. They exchange a glance, nothing more. Marcourt finishes his breakfast and leaves the restaurant.
I'm there, I walk in to have breakfast, and I see this Mike Petum guy who runs North Idaho News. And I see him there, and we make eye contact, and I don't say a word to him, he doesn't say a word to me. I just eat my breakfast and then I go, right? I just leave. But I notice as I'm leaving the parking lot, he's like standing out there. Now, he was there way before me, should have left way before me. But I just found it very odd that he was standing there, and then he walks in front of my Jeep and then turns around when he gets to the other side of the Jeep acting startled. Then I get a call from the police department, from the Coeur d'Alene Police Department, asking if I'd been at Nosworthy's at around 9 a.m. or whatever. And I said, yeah, I had breakfast there. And he goes, yeah, we got a report that you tried to run somebody over in the parking lot.
Here's the audio from Mike Petum's call to the Coeur d'Alene police.
I was just at Nosworthy's, and a guy that I know that we don't really get along was there. And as I was walking out to my vehicle, he boots on it and tries to run me over in the parking lot.
Okay, and then when did this happen?
About 10 minutes ago at Nosworthy's.
And what kind of vehicle?
He was in a white Jeep.
And
He owns a store called Patriot Hangout. His name is Mike Marcourt. I've had run-ins with him on a political level lately.
And I'm sorry, what was
We were all
his
in
last name?
the Marcourt.
Okay. And so you guys don't get along due to political reasons?
Yeah, so and then we're all at Nosworthy. He didn't say anything, he acknowledged me, but that was it. And then we were walking out to our vehicles, and I go across the parking lot, and he takes off and like speeds towards me, and I was like, whoa. I don't know how we went from not saying anything to each other to that. I don't know.
Okay.
Now this story takes a most interesting turn when Mike Marcourt obtains video footage from a neighboring business that showed exactly what happened in the parking lot at Nosworthy's.
From the time I reached my Jeep to the time that I backed up and left, about 15 seconds passed. He told the officer that I was waiting for him in the parking lot. He also said that he started walking across and then I started to back out. And if you watch closely, he's timing his walk across the parking lot, and still I didn't come close to revving my engine, swerving to try to run him over. So what you're going to see now is me walking to my vehicle. You can see me walking to the Jeep. Within about 15 seconds from reaching the Jeep, I back up and leave. You see him pacing back and forth, trying to time, me leaving so he can make it look like something it isn't. But just watch real closely, and you'll also see that I've already backed out, and then he starts to walk across, and I hadn't gone fast enough. So he was clearly all the way to his vehicle before I ever passed. Didn't rev my engine, didn't try to swerve to run him over. I mean, the evidence is there. He's a liar.
In that clip, you see Mike Petum as he realized he started to cross the parking lot prior to Marcourt backing out of his spot, so Petum turns around, waits, and then makes a second attempt at staging this incident. His timing was still so off that his attempt at looking startled completely missed the mark. So who is Mike Petum, and what would be his motivation for lying about Marcourt's actions? To understand this fully, it's necessary to go back a little bit. Mike Petum founded Mike Petum Construction in 2012 in Whatcom County outside of Seattle in the Bellingham, Washington area. Since his move to Kootenai County in December of 2021, he's also currently doing business as Lake City Excavation. Mike was a volunteer firefighter and ran for Whatcom County Council in 2018 and has seemed to espouse conservative values and Republican viewpoints. According to a video interview with Mike's wife, Christy, found on the COVID-19 Oral History Project website, Mike Petum, his wife and kids moved from Washington State to Idaho during the pandemic due to restrictions in the state of Washington. Since their move to North Idaho, both Mike and his wife have become real estate agents. They are also friends and supporters of Sheriff Bob Norris. In fact, it's a whole friend group and a circle jerk of die-hard Norris supporters that includes so-called Republicans and conservatives who behave badly. Now, earlier you heard Mike Marcourt say that Petum was part of North Idaho News. North Idaho News is a Facebook page that provides up-to-the-minute information on things like car accidents and other incidents that happen around the area. North Idaho News is not a registered news organization that I can tell. It appears to be nothing more than a Facebook page which was created in 2018. But the page following has grown to over 142,000, making it quite an asset in Kootenai County. Mike Petum is one of the page administrators. He contributes and is a promoter of North Idaho News. Now, I don't believe that North Idaho News was the brainchild of Mike Petum. The page itself was established in 2018 prior to his move to Idaho. It's more likely that Petum became one of the page administrators through a local connection, and now with his connection to it, he leverages the popularity of this page to promote things such as his wife's real estate business and sizzle pieces and positive PR for Kootenai County Sheriff Bob Norris, which you see pretty frequently posted on this page. Bob Norris's team, including Kootenai County Commissioner Bruce Matari, understand the power of social media and the ability to control information regarding Norris and his administration that gets pushed out to the public. And as it turns out, Mike Petum and his connection to North Idaho News is a piece to that puzzle as a social media influencer. Sheriff Bob Norris and County Commissioner Bruce Matari scratch Petum's back, and he'll scratch theirs. Now it starts to make a bit more sense as to why Petum is so defensive of Norris and why Norris is frequently seen with Mike Petum. Petum's feeling like he's in the popular kids club, and as we've learned, he's willing to defend his position because Norris needs him, and that makes him feel good. So Mike Petum has proven that he will lie about others and even go so far as to contact the police and accuse a Dan Wilson supporter like Mike Marcourt of trying to run him over in the parking lot. Mike Petum, did you justify this disgusting lie and false report because the exultation of Bob Norris outmoded your moral compass? It wasn't like something bad happened and you were forced out of fear to cover your tracks. You actually created an entire false set of circumstances out of thin air. You're an embarrassment. You clearly thought that you were going to use your law enforcement connections to say that an innocent person who was minding their own business attempted to assault you with his car. You didn't lie to the police because they sought you out and in self-defense you had to make up a story. No. You orchestrated this, then used a police report to stain an innocent man's public record. But you got caught. A liar is a liar, Mike Petum. You're a proven liar that owns Mike Petum Construction and Lake City Excavation. You're a proven liar who supports Bob Norris for whatever it is you're getting out of it. You're a proven liar who operates as a real estate agent in North Idaho. A proven liar who has stated that you write press releases for Kootenai County Sheriff's Office. Conflict of interest. And you're playing dirty to protect your kingdom. You sound like an idiot. You look like an idiot. And did I mention you're a liar? And you've been exposed.
And as I was walking out to my vehicle, he boots on it and tries to run me over in the parking lot.
That's awesome. First time I've seen that. So
Yeah, you had to wait to see it.
you know, I remember when the very first time that I met, I don't know, I lost my sound all of a sudden. It's not as loud.
You're there.
Mike Petum, whatever it is, came to one of my first speaking engagements.
Yes.
And luckily, we had friends folks that became friends. Didn't know them at the time. They were in attendance. And I made a statement about immigration. And on video, Mike then twists what I said around 180 degrees and accuses me of doing something. And I said, that's not what I said. And he tried insisting, and he was shouted down by the crowd who saw what he's doing. That's how brazen that he is. Yep. But every time I hear him, I think of Kevin off of The Office.
Yeah, there are a lot more little golden nuggets we could have added to that because we've got other sound bites. And he makes his appearance around all things Bob Norris. Yeah. And when you were running for office, he made it his business to get in between, to be a roadblock and to be a problem for you.
Yeah. Well, if you are doing wrong, you are going to be exposed. This is just the first of many that have been a long time coming of those that, you know, we've dealt with the alternative media right here.
There was even a hint in that video of some exposing to be done.
Look,
that is
Bob Norris has said frequently, anytime that he is challenged and he doesn't like something, he gets and uses the county's resources, comes up with his slide PowerPoints, and gets up and tells people through press releases or PowerPoints or town halls that the people that say things that are contrary to what he says are not truthful, they're not reliable, and that only trust sources that come from organizations that list their board members and are accredited as what do you say? It's not registered or licensed as true media.
Right.
So
board of directors
he uses Petum. In fact, there was a lot of people that were pissed off when the beloved Wolf Lodge burned to the ground back in last fall, early fall, late summer. And the very first person on scene was Malibu Bob, talking about, hey, I'm here. I'm here to save the day. And who is his videographer?
Yeah.
And he did. Petum said in a Facebook drop on our page that he provided press releases for the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office, but not Bob Norris. Now, I sent in a records request to the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office, and they deny that he has any involvement with them. So again, is that another lie, or is Kootenai County Sheriff's Office lying?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Lisa Schultz wanted to know if there have been any updates from Coeur d'Alene Police on what's being done with this. I know Mike Marquardt has been obviously tediously personally working on it, and it's been a frustrating process being able to get information. He obviously did get the 911 calls and then some of the physical handwritten reports. And one of the other issues out of many that Mike Marquardt, owner of Patriot Hangout, the issues that he had was that Petum's story also continued to change. So it went from I am filing a report to, I mean, the terminology.
Well, I think what he said is he said we didn't have any words, but then in the police report, when the officers showed up, because the audio that we heard was a 911 call.
Yes.
And the actual statements he was making to law enforcement that arrived to interview him is that they had some kind of words out in the dining room.
Different from, like polar opposite from what he said on the call. But I know that Marquardt's having trouble. I mean, he has to personally or civilly.
It seems to me like they're taking,
not.
It sounds like to me he may have to sue them to get the information that he wants. So, part of it is going through the Coeur d'Alene Police Department, and the other part is going through Kootenai County Sheriff's Office. So, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I can tell you that I love the records people at the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office and the county in general. The clerks have a tough job, and they have to endure a lot of records requests from myself. They're merely the conduit. They are not the individuals that approve what is released and what is not, but sometimes folks might think that they are the cause of the obstruction. And let me assure you, the fine folks that work very hard at the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office and the county in general and records, good folks. But I have been obstructed quite a bit since the beginning by those in command. And I've been told that, they're not going to give me certain information unless I sue them. Right. So, it's going to be interesting.
Don't you love that position that we as taxpayers who elect officials and then the position that we're left in, which is, again, that is why it's dangerous territory when you have all career long law enforcement elected into that one position that's there to really represent the people and be that go-between. Yeah. But when you're duped into believing that sheriff should be lifelong law, where do you think their loyalties
are going to lie? Well, I think there's an idea that the sheriff is supposed to be loyal to the people that serve under him. And while the sheriff has to take care of his people and be that leader that they need, he is ultimately protecting the people of the county. And the conduit is his leadership and the deputies that work under him. To have a sheriff that is aligned and specifically as the special interests of the Deputy Sheriff's Association, not a good thing. And we're going to be talking more as the weeks come, not only about the Deputy Sheriff's Association, more specifically the FOP 43, but you saw in that video on the corner several actors that are also alternative media and are extremely tied to Bob Norris, that are extremely crass people, say extremely I would say profane things, and happen to be tied into Paul Van Noy at Candlelight Church. Yeah. So you saw Stephanie Fetzer, who I've been told is handling his book sales. You see Aaron and Lucky Bernard of the Kootenai Spectator. And here's what's funny. They were so upset that I was running for sheriff because I came from Spokane before I moved to Idaho, even though I've been in Spokane, this region, my entire life. But they lived in Seattle for a while. Petum came from Seattle. Yeah. Fetzer came from California. Yep. So we're going to be giving them all their due and exposure that they need. But I think it's time we hear a word from our sponsor, because I'm holding one of their sticks in my hand right now.
Let's do it.
Light up that cigar. Stella's Stogies is your one-stop shop for all things cigars. Located on historic Main Street in Spirit Lake, Stella's Stogies believes that there's nothing quite like enjoying a good cigar with friends. That's why they're there to help you pick the perfect cigar. Stella's has a great selection of cigars, cigar accessories, and information about cigars, making it easy for you to find just what you're looking for. Owners Brad and Lisa are passionate about cigars and are committed to providing you with the best possible cigar shop
shopping experience. They believe that a good cigar is a great way to relax and socialize, and they're excited to share their love of cigars with you. Stella's also does pop-up shops for events, so be sure to ask them about that. Mention that you heard about Stella's Stogies on the Liberty Without Compromise live stream and get 10% off your purchase. Learn more at stellasstogies.com.
And I'm holding right now a stick box. I bought a box of these from Brad and Lisa. It's Honor Among Thieves Sinistro, and it will knock your socks off.
You got to hold it up and then do this like the influencers do.
Like this too?
I
don't know. Is that the way?
The backside.
Well, that way? Oh, I don't know. Surprise. All right. We're going to leave you folks with some current legislation that has been introduced through bills in the Idaho State Legislature. And I asked this question. Are the bills that they are working on establishing and securing your liberty right here in Idaho to a greater degree?
This is going to be a good one. We're going to have to redo this one too. I can already see. Spend more time on it.
Are they doing things that are kind of like, distractions? Now, we know that there's a lot of bills that are introduced every year. A lot of them don't even make them out of committee. But I've adopted, not adopted. I read adopt.
Oh,
I have selected about 6 that I thought were just interesting. I downloaded these, and we're going to go over them really, really fast. You guys, of course, can go to the Idaho State Legislature website and pull these down for yourself to see what's going on. So here's what's currently being heard in committees right now. You have House Bill 0011. The legislation, this is about illegal immigration. The legislation prohibits the illegal entry or into or illegal presence in this state by a person who is an alien, the enforcement of those prohibitions and certain related orders, including immunity from liability and indemnification for enforcement actions, and authorizing or requiring under certain circumstances the removal of persons who violate those prohibitions, creating criminal offenses. So that was introduced by Representative Jaron Crane and Bruce Skog. So I don't know. I like it. I think that I hope this one, since the federal government was so late coming, this was necessary. And I think that we need to have layers of protection, depth and defense, if you will. So good job. Let's see what happens when it comes time to vote. The next one is ICE Act. And basically what it says is that the Idaho Immigration Cooperation and Enforcement Act, or ICE, fulfills Idaho's commitment to support the Trump administration in the identification, detainment, and deportation of dangerous illegal aliens found in Idaho. President Trump has identified a strategic priority of removing from the United States those illegal aliens who threaten the safety or security of the American people, particularly those involved in criminal cartels, foreign gangs, criminal organizations, and human trafficking and smuggling. So what it does is it basically requires law enforcement to join up with this ICE Act and cooperate with the federal government. So I think that is a great thing. I'm not reading the entire bill. I'm reading what's called the summary. So you can go look at it yourself. That ICE Act is House Bill 1039. Take a look. It's a fascinating read. All right. I like that. Let's see. The next one is cloud seeding.
All right.
Now, we've heard of chemtrails and contrails, and contrails are those mists of vapor that eventually dissipate fairly rapidly behind commercial jet airlines. But up until this year, or now it's last May, I was on the fence about whether or not our skies over this region were being, sprayed with chemicals.
Right.
Until you and I came out of a restaurant one day and we saw all the crisscross patterns and all the mist dissipating, right?
Mother's Day, yeah.
So what we do know is that Idaho Power has programs where they are cloud seeding, and they claim that the cloud seeding is not spraying chemicals to harm citizens, but rather they're doing it above the mountains. This bill says that it's going to add definitions and seeks to enhance transparency and accountability in Idaho's cloud seeding operations by requiring the Idaho Water Resource Board to publish annual reports detailing operational date, environmental impact, public engagement, effectiveness, metrics, and practices. By requiring these disclosures, the bill aims to ensure that cloud seeding operations are conducted responsibly with due consideration for general impacts, public involvement, and legislative oversight. So, I like seeing this. I wish that what we would have done is adopted what Tennessee and I believe Rhode Island did, which is completely banning. You're not going to spray anything over our skies. And I'm not convinced. I'm not a scientist. I don't know the science, but I'm not really keen to man trying to manipulate the weather to begin with. And especially with chemicals that just because you say they're safe, we have no idea what the true impact is. And I think it's irresponsible for the state of Idaho to allow this without having a large forum for the entire state to participate in hearings so that we can weigh in. The sheriff can't do much when it comes to what is being sprayed in Idaho airspace above. But I think that a sheriff could definitely be making a pretty big stink if he sees this to demand what answers he needs from what is going on over our heads. So I like that. Let's see what happens there. It's a start anyway. I'd like to see it all banned. Next one is drugs, and this is next to last. The primary legislative responsibility as stated in Idaho's Constitution is that the first concern of all good government is the virtue and sobriety of the people and the purity of the home. It also states that the legislature should further all wise and well-directed efforts for the promotion of temperance and morality. The legalization and normalization of unlawful drugs is in direct conflict with the constitutional mandate. Such legalization is detrimental to the community, to the environment, to the economy, and to the health of individuals and families. Therefore, a constitutional amendment addressing these findings is hereby declared to be reasonable and necessary. So, this proposed constitutional amendment, interesting way that they went about saying we don't want any kind of illegal drugs here, to include marijuana, which I know is going to upset Bob Norris's donors. Because he received almost I'm gonna be easy, $5,000 from the cannabis industry out of state during this last campaign. Bruce Matari received $2,000 from the industry back when he was running in 22, again out of state. And lastly, I think Commissioner Duncan received $1,000. To be fair, so
it seems to be a foreshadowing.
Yeah, maybe that fund will drop off and it'll dry up.
A quick question in between. I know you've got a couple more, but Betty over on YouTube wants to know if the community here has had any demonstrations of protest for deportation.
None that we have seen right here in Kootenai County. There have been a small scattering over in Spokane, but nothing more than a slow news day to get KREM 2 and KXLY and the legacy media out to write their, non-biased opinions on what's going on. But I do know that I'm being told that deputies now are cooperating and helping get the invaders out of the county is starting to be a priority. Now, we came out and taunted Bob Norris 2 weeks ago and said, hey, nothing has been said since Trump was elected. And you were elected, so you've had all the way from November, basically the first week of November, all the way through January the 20th, when Trump was sworn in, to come up with a plan. And he did not have anything planned. 2 days later, after our broadcast, magically, he gets interviews with KREM 2 and the Coeur d'Alene Press, and I think Spokesman Review might have done something as well. So I'm glad.
He said, if you're here legally, you have nothing to worry about. He didn't really say a whole lot. It was not.
And at the end of the day, he's not actually doing anything because we know that from public records requests that he has directed his troops to do nothing. There is nothing in writing. There's no memos. There's no directives to any of his staff. Nothing to direct them to change anything compared to what they were doing pre-Trump being elected. So I think it's hilarious. He still has not joined ICE 287G. So for what is it, Rogue Lou, who's a huge Norris lover, tried to argue with her online, and she had a live X space. And I think Senator Lenny was on that as well as Theo Wold. yeah, you guys can check, unless the Cooney County Sheriff's Office is lying to me, which is always a possibility, but no records are found. And
they're withholding.
I did
they don't
hear
lie, they withhold.
that they are allowing federal law enforcement to ride in Cooney County vehicles. So I asked that question in my records request, and they told me no records exist, no policies, no directives to allow federal law enforcement, so primarily ICE, Customs Border Patrol, to ride and work inside, Kootenai's vehicles as they're going out. So,
but you hear that they are?
Well, I know they are. So I've been told by deputies inside that that is happening now. So again, I'm glad to lead the charge for Bob Norris. I say it and then it happens. I'll just keep those public records requests going in there to both you and Special Deputy DC Matari for, your new ideas that you need. All right, we're going to talk about two more quick ones. Senator Lenny put this one out. This is important. SLAW's legislation safeguards freedom of speech and public participation by swiftly dismissing meritless strategic lawsuits against public participation, ensuring public engagement and expression on matters of societal or community interest, not stifled by legal intimidation. Now, I don't know this for certain, but my guess is this would probably do something. Had this been in law back when Eamon Bundy was speaking out against the hospital over the baby Cyrus issue, this might have protected him against that lawsuit. I don't know. Again, just complete off the cuff speculation, but I think that suing for free speech should be much harder than what it currently is in the state of Idaho. All right, last one. This is the one that's going to probably anger some of you. We're going to talk about it, but I want you to look at this through a couple different lenses. One is as a United States citizen, no religious affiliation, but just as a citizen. Now, I know that's hard to separate ourselves, but the other one is look at it through a biblical worldview. Now, I've said this for quite a long time, and my friends get angry when I say this, but culture and the government at one time were parallel. That means the morals of the culture were driving the founders and the documents that they wrote. Again, the founder said, this Constitution, this government is for moral and righteous people. All those people had a same common definition of what morality is. This natural law type of things, universal. We don't steal, we don't murder, those basic things. But our culture has shifted. As I showed you earlier, back when the universities started changing their philosophies as far as did man come from God or did man evolve? And so our culture is no longer a Christian culture. We're a post-Christian nation. And you cannot force your views legislatively anymore the way we once did. The only way that you change that is by changing the culture. And the churches are the ones that are supposed to be leading that charge, not conforming to the world. But with all the churches that we have on every corner, this entire region should be changed. And it is not. And so I understand that my friends that are Christians, followers of Christ, that want to legislate some of this stuff to a greater degree. I'm not saying in principle that it is wrong, but you're not going to force people now in a culture that does not believe in your Christian values to view through the rule of law, through the Constitution, the ability to do the things that we once did when everybody was along the same belief. So this bill was introduced by Cooney County Representative Jordan Redmond. Jordan was a homeschool kid, businessman. He's pretty ambitious, and here's what he proposed. This legislation requires that public school teachers read passages from the Bible to their classroom every day without instruction or comment, consistent with the longstanding practice of school-sponsored Bible reading in both Idaho and the United States. Schools would provide reasonable accommodations to teachers and students with concise objections. Okay, so basically what they're saying is, look, no different than the 10 Commandments. It's okay to have them up, but we're going to go a step further, and we're going to read a passage from the Bible every day. If you choose as a teacher or student, you want to be a part of that, fine. You don't have to be a part of it, and you're excused. So my question then is this. Number one, how important is this legislation right now, considering everything that we're facing of list of priorities? I mean, if you're going to public education, many of us, me 25 years ago, knew that public education was a cesspool, to use Bob Norris's language. I don't want the government instructing my children. It's my responsibility. And so I accommodated the ability to homeschool those kids, personal choice. I do not want schools instilling their worldview into my children. And a lot of you agree. You don't have your kids in public institutions. So the question is, in the world of where liberty is being stolen all the time through all sorts of illegal usurpations of our liberty, everything from spraying our skies to not dealing with illegal immigration, how important was this legislation right now? And what would the founders say right now? So Thomas Jefferson, our quote for the week, said the following, and he had a lot to say. People have misinterpreted or misquoted, rather, the First Amendment saying there's a separation of church and state. Congress shall make no laws establishing a certain religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. And they take this quote and they try to combine it into the First Amendment. Here's what Thomas Jefferson said in his letter to the Danbury Baptist Associations back in 1802. He says, believing with you that religion is a matter which lies solely between man and his God, that he owes account to no other for his faith or his worship, that the legislative powers of government reach actions only and not opinions, I contemplate with sovereign reverence that the act of the whole American people which declared that their legislature should make no law respecting an established religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, thus building a wall of separation between church and state. Notice what I said, or what he said. Congress, the government, is not going to force people to worship the way they don't want to. But it's not going to prohibit it either, right? That means if you want to go to school and read your Bible or hold a Bible club, you're well within your rights. Here's the problem I have with this. I read the scripture every single day. I think that everybody could benefit from opening their Bibles and listening to the Word of God. But if you're going to do this, then what's going to, from a constitutional standpoint, what is going to prohibit somebody that does not have a Christian faith, that wants to promote, the Quran or some other Middle East teaching or Satanism? They're coming up with all sorts of religions today. Some things could be extremely crass. Are you going to go in and limit the Bible when it gets into its graphic nature and say, well, we can read this, but somebody that creates their own religion or follows something that says something extremely crass that we don't agree with? I mean, pride, LGBTQ, one could argue, is a religion. It's their strongly held belief. Be very, very careful in the public institutions when, as a government, you institute the requirement to read something religious. There's a difference in my belief, and I see that they're attempting to go the constitutional route and precedent set years and years ago when we were a Christian culture, or at least believed in those values. But you are opening yourself up right now into a door that you probably don't want to go through, and you're best leaving it up to, hey, spend 5 minutes every day, open up your book of faith or whatever you get direction from, and read it. So I know I'm making my Christian friends mad. I hope you understand what I'm saying, because I believe in liberty without compromise. But understand, our culture today is not the same that the founders found themselves in 250 years ago. But remember, those men, they were brave, they were flawed, they were sometimes scared, sometimes, they ran around with maybe not the greatest examples, but by and large, as a collective group, they did a mighty thing when they got together, gave us our documents. We didn't descend from those fearful men. They weren't. They were men who did understand the time and were called accordingly to do great things. So I want you to stay strong and of good courage. Somebody's doing something wrong, call it out. Don't be afraid to be humble yourself, myself included. Have to say that every day. Pray for Ron. Pray for him during his treatments. Pray for Todd and any others out there that are ill. We look forward to seeing you in the not too distant future next Wednesday.
Thank you for joining us for the Liberty Without Compromise live stream broadcast. We are the only local, live, politically conservative broadcast here in Kootenai County. If you're listening back on our podcast or a video replay, remember you can watch us live on Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. on Facebook, YouTube, or X. We're working on adding on those other platforms also, getting back to Instagram and TikTok. Learn more and purchase apparel at libertywithoutcompromise.com. And for our podcast, listen and subscribe wherever you get your shows.
Good night.